This is Matthew from Commercial Deal Junkie. I'm going to be going over some of the common mistakes I see that retail real estate owners make while owning retail shopping centers. Now, many of these mistakes I've made myself, many of them I've watched other landlords make that I've done leasing for, but I'm going to be going over step by step on how to avoid those. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Matthew Masood. I'm a commercial real estate investor and broker, and I buy commercial real estate all around the country, as well as do quite a bit of leasing here in Southern California. So let's start going over some of these mistakes that shopping center owner make. The first one is under budgeting TI and commissions. A lot of people don't know that it costs money to fill spaces in shopping centers. It's not free. It's not like apartments where you just put it up on Zillow or whatever and you get people that want to see the space. It costs money to lease the space out in two major ways. Number one, you have TIs, which is short for tenant improvement. In many cases, unless the space was previously built out for something else, which we call second generation, you typically have to spend money on the space, helping the tenant build it out for their use. For example, you have a restaurant coming in, it's a clear white box space with nothing but, white walls, white flooring, and a restaurant comes in that wants to take over the space. But they're gonna have to spend, $150,000 on the space, adding a hood and a grease trap and adding a bathroom and chairs. In many cases, the tenant expects you to split that cost with them. Now, it might sound like, oh, that's crazy. Why would I spend so much bringing a tenant in? Reality is, this tenant might take, 3,000 square feet, might be paying eight, nine, $10,000 a month. They're going to stay for 10 years. They're going to make your building worth hundreds of thousands of dollars more. In many cases, it is worth it for you to spend money in TI, tenant improvements, to help them build out the space. That's one cost of getting a new tenant. The other one's leasing commissions. In many cases, unless you live next to the property and you're prepared to walk the space and show it to tenants, you're going to hire a leasing broker that's going to go out. They're going to put up a sign. They're going to put it up on LoopNet, CoStar, Crexi, all those different websites, and they're going to answer the phone and walk people through the space and go over the details and how much it's going to cost. And then you have to pay that person money. You have to give them money for doing the work and finding the tenants and filling out, creating the lease and accepting applications. That costs money. So my rule of thumb, now this can vary wildly. This can vary, if the space is in really bad shape, you might have to offer a lot more in TI here. But I typically budget, if it's a generally in decent shape space, I budget $15 a square foot in tenant improvements, and then I budget 6% in leasing commission. For example, let's say we have a 3,000 square foot space. So if the space is 3,000 square foot, I'm going to budget 15,000 in TI. So I'm going to spend about $45,000 helping the tenant build out the space. Again, this can vary wildly. If the space is raw, has no HVAC or electrical or no bathrooms, and you really got to tenants got to build the whole space out, this could be up to $100. If the space is already, there used to be a restaurant in there, for example, and it already has the hood and the grease trap and maybe even some tables, this could be zero. So like I said, it varies wildly when it comes to tenant improvement. But on a space like this, I budget $45,000 in tenant improvements, and I'm also going to do 6% leasing commission. So say it's 3,000 square feet. Let's say the rent is $20 a square foot on a 5-year lease. That means the total rent that the tenant's going to pay over the 5-year lease is $300,000 times 0.06. That means I'm going to pay the tenant 18 grand plus the 45 grand for TI. That means I need to budget $63,000 just to fill the space up. Now, chances are 3,000 square foot tenant. I mean, we said $20 a square foot, so this tenant's going to pay you 5 grand a month base rent. So within 12 months, essentially, you've made back the money that you spent getting that tenant in the space. If they're signing a 5, 7, 10-year lease, it could be advantageous for you. Now, I buy a lot of building from landlords that bought buildings and were unable to fill it up because they refused to spend money on TI or pay a broker to lease the space out. So it's the easiest way for me to grab stuff that's vacant, has vacancies. And a lot of times when I'm like, why has this building been vacant? Why has this spot been vacant for 3 years? Come to find out, the landlord refuses to pay TIs or leasing commissions. And that's the nature of the beast in retail. You got to spend money to get tenants in there, but they tend to stay a lot longer. They tend to take care of the space and they'll pay pretty solid rents. So that's the biggest one I see: under budgeting, tenant improvements, and leasing commission. All right. The next big mistake that I see people see is not looking at traffic counts when they buy the building. So traffic counts is simple: how many vehicles pass the road directly in front of the shopping center? Now, my rule of thumb is I want to see over 10,000 vehicles. 20,000, I like. 30,000, I start to get excited. 40,000, it's a main road. And I love that. So typically you just want to, this is all free with the Department of Transportation. Um, LoopNet will have that listed as well. If the property is listed on LoopNet, you can scroll down and go to the map section and actually find the traffic counts. But they just grab the data from the Department of Transportation. The nice thing is they put it in a place for you, so you don't have to go around for each property and find that data. They make it much easier to find. You should know how many vehicles are passing in front of your shopping center. And we'll get into this later. We should also know how easy it is for them to get in and get out, but know how many vehicles are passing in front of your shopping center because, you know, you'd be surprised on what could happen. For example, I was leasing a shopping center in Ohio that had used to have 20,000 vehicles per day in front of the shopping center. And then there was a large military base that had two main entrances in which all the service personnel would come into the military base. And then they closed down one of the entrances. This entrance was right in front of this mall or this shopping center. So now everyone had to go through the front entrance. So the vehicles per day in front of that road dropped from 20,000 to 6,000. If this property, now that was outside of his control, but he actually bought it after they closed the entrance. He bought it after they closed the entrance. And what he was looking at old data and, oh, 20,000 vehicles a day. But the reality is, if he would have looked at the most up to date numbers, it would have been 6,000, which you could have been able to tell if you just go outside and spend a day in the parking lot of the plaza and just watch the street that goes by. You go like, this isn't 20,000 vehicles a day. So you can kind of get an idea there on traffic counts. This is critical for your tenants to succeed. Now it matters less if you have, if you plan on getting, a gym and a insurance office and maybe a dentist. Those are less impulse purchases, and those tend to be destinations. Traffic counts really matters for impulse shops, smoke shops. There's quite a few things where it's like, oh, I need to pick something up on the way home. I'm going to stop by here and I'm going to grab it. Traffic counts really plays a role there. Or even if you do have a dentist, if you drive by and you're like, oh, I've always seen this dentist, I may stop by. If you have 10,000 people a day that drive by, 100,000 people every 2 weeks, by the end of the year, you've had millions of people drive by the center. A couple of them are going to stop by the businesses or at least know, oh, next time, oh, I need to stop by the dentist. Oh, I wonder if this one on the way home is covered by my insurance. Let me stop in. Let me check online. It helps. It makes a difference no matter what type of business it is. All right, next is location demographics. Now, there's a lot that goes into here, but this is critical when it comes to choosing a shopping center. How many people live around the center? How many people is there within a 1 mile radius? My rule of thumb is I want to see at least 10,000 people in a 1 mile radius. I like to see 20, 30 means it's like a densely populated area. Once you get into suburbs, you might start seeing 6, 7, and then obviously in really suburban areas, you might see 2 or 3,000, which I recommend staying away from, just because there aren't enough people to serve the tenants, and you don't want to buy a building in which the tenants are going to struggle. You want to be able to put tenants in there they do really well, where they'll never leave your center. All right. How many people are moving to the area? Simply put, population growth. Is the population positive? Is it negative? I was looking at some plazas in suburbs of Illinois where the numbers worked out, but the population was dropping 3% per year. So it's like, do I really want to buy something here where I know there's going to be less demand next year than the year after? That means tenant sales might be expected to decline, especially if a lot of them are depending on impulse buys. How many people are moving or leaving the area? What's the crime rate of the area? Now, I bought some shopping centers in pretty bad areas, and they still need tenants, and tenants can still do good. You still need certain tenants might serve the demographics, but you're going to have to take extra precautions for your HVACs and theft and security. So it's not that you shouldn't buy in a high crime neighborhood. It's that there are extra precautions you have to take. Next, what's the average household income? Is it 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000? All that's going to play a role on what kind of tenants you're going to be able to attract, how quickly you're going to be able to lease it, and at what rates are you going to be able to lease a shopping center. This is all critical. Next, parking and access. Now, this probably should be higher up here because parking is absolutely critical. I lost it. Oh, it's because I moved it up. Parking is ridiculous because story time. I bought a shopping center in Houston with a weak parking ratio. Parking is measured by how many spots are there per 1,000 square feet of leasable square feet there is in the plaza. Okay. The rule of thumb is you want over 3. So I bought a shopping center that was 2.09 spots per 1,000 square feet. Really weak parking ratio. And I can't tell you how many tenants I had to turn away because of the parking ratio. Now, this isn't just me. The city will also say, if you're a coffee shop, this is the parking ratio that has to be available in the shopping center for you to be able to put a coffee shop in there. Even though I've had several great applications that I would have taken, they would have not been able to open in the shopping center because the parking ratios weren't there. You have to know your parking ratios. I like to see more than 3 spots per 1,000 square feet. That's how I know that there's enough spots for there for most tenants. Obviously, I love 4. You get into the 5 range, and now you open the door to almost all tenant types. And you'd be surprised, sometimes certain tenant types and also the mixes of the tenants. For example, if you have a restaurant that's super busy at night, you also don't want to have another restaurant that's super busy. And maybe the other restaurant in the plaza, you want it to be a breakfast place that's mostly open during the day and might close earlier. Or maybe you have a salon that closes at 5 or 6, and then you have a restaurant that gets really busy 7, 8, 9. So you want to be careful when you're looking at your tenant mix. You want to take into account parking when you're looking at your tenant. Next is access. How easy is it to get in and out of the plaza? Sometimes I've looked at shopping centers where everything worked except there was no entrance to the plaza on the main road. The main road had no end. You had to go down the side street to enter the plaza. And that, believe it or not, that just decreases the amount of impulse shoppers. Someone's driving down the street and they see a smoke shop and they're like, oh, I need to pick up cigarettes, but they can't get into the plaza. They're just going to keep driving and stop by the next smoke shop. It's that simple. And it's also, people need to be able to get in and out easy. You don't want to create congestion in the parking lot because of how difficult it is to get in and out of the parking lot. So that's important. Signage. How clear is the signage visible? Is the signage on the main street, or is the signage in the back only showing on the side street? Signage is important. Is it a signalized intersection? That means, is there a stoplight right where the shopping center is? Why? Because that forces people to stop in their cars and they're forced to look out their windows and they see the shopping center. The more time they spend at the shopping center, the more aware they are of the tenants that are there, the more likely they are at some point in time to go shop there. So if someone stopped at a light and they're just sitting there waiting for the light to turn green, and they look out the window and they see, oh, there's a dentist here. Next time they think their tooth hurts, they might want to check out that dentist. Oh, there's a smoke shop there. Next time they're driving home and they need to pick something up, they might stop there. So signalized intersection makes a difference on a long enough period of time where the tenants truly do benefit from it. Now, the reality is it's very unlikely you're going to have a shopping center that has all of it, unless maybe in a really high traffic, high income area, it's going to be a really expensive shopping center, but it's very unlikely a shopping center will have all of it. So you have to be willing to know where you're willing to negotiate. For example, I'm willing to negotiate on the crime. I'm willing to buy stuff in a bit higher crime area, but I'm not willing to compromise on parking. I learned my lesson. Where's parking? I'm not willing to compromise on parking anymore because I realize how hard it is to stabilize a property when there isn't enough parking. It's very difficult to get tenants. For example, I'm willing to fight the battle over signage. So if signage is weak, the monument sign is small or it's in the back, I'm willing to buy the property and then go through the process of permitting a new sign. So you have to figure out which battles you're willing to fight. One that's not really negotiable, I learned my lesson on, is under budgeting TI and leasing commission. Where I buy the property and I want to find a tenant, but the tenant comes to me, it's like, hey, I'm willing to come in, but I need your help. I need 10, 15, 20 grand building the space out. And in the reality, when you look at the numbers, it actually makes sense for you to bring that tenant in because the building's going to jump in value and you're going to start bringing in revenue. You have to make sure that you have that budget. So, like I said, no property will check every box. But you have to figure out which battles you're willing to fight and which you aren't. The goal is that you don't make some of the mistakes that I made or some of the mistakes that I see here in the shopping center world when it comes to leasing. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want to connect, I'm open about joining my Skool community. That's where I go into a bit more details about specific projects I'm working on. I ask questions of people. People can ask questions of me, and where I communicate with people more. Now, if you have a specific deal you want to go over, specific questions you want to go over, I got my email and my phone number here. Feel free to shoot me an email or give me a ring if you want to talk real estate, and I will talk your ear off when it comes to commercial real estate. Anyway, again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, do all the algorithm stuff, and I promise I will catch you guys on the